Hi, everybody. My name is Jennifer Cunningham. I'm the AVP of Alumni Relations here at Lehigh University. We are here today to learn about the physical internet. I'm going to go through a few housekeeping things and then we'll get right into our presentation. I will remind you that the success of these webinars really depends on your questions. So if you have a question during the presentation, type it in. There is on the very bottom of your screen, it says chat, and it looks like a cartoon balloon with 3 dots in it. Click on that, and you'll see a pop-up window come, and you can type your questions in there. I will read those aloud to Professor Zacharia, probably at the end, but if it's a very specific question on something he's covering, I will interrupt and ask him right then. That's all. There's no phone on your end, so if your dog is barking or there's an ambulance going by, don't worry. We cannot hear it. Just a side note, we had a beautiful graduation here yesterday. Is that just yesterday? It was just yesterday. Monday. 2 days ago. Perfect weather, beautiful. Selfishly, I got 2,000 more alumni that we can get engaged with our 80,000 network here at Lehigh. So it was just a gorgeous day. And that was live streamed. So if you go onto lehigh.edu, you can watch a recording of that if you missed it. Anyway, we will get right into it. We are very lucky to have Dr. Zacharia here with us today. He is an associate professor of supply chain management here at Roush and the director of the Center of Supply Chain Research. He's been at Lehigh for 8 years and got his PhD from Tennessee, also got degrees from Alberta and Calgary. So are you a Canadian?
Yes.
Professor? Oh, excellent.
And an American.
And an American, excellent.
Got both passports.
All right, well, let's get right into it.
All right. Thanks very much, Jennifer. So I'm going to give you a brief overview of the physical internet. I do want to begin with a bit of a commercial. I'm the director for the Lehigh Center for Supply Chain Research. And we have a fall forum for November 8th and 9th, where we're going to talk about disruptive innovations in the supply chain. And there is a special discount for all Lehigh alums. So please do check out the website. We're going to have some great presentations when that actually happens. Okay, so let's begin with where did the term physical internet actually come from? It was first used in a 2006 headline from the British journal The Economist, and that was looking at logistics in a variety of supply chain articles. But that sort of inspired Benoit Montreal, who actually wrote some articles that looked at this idea of organizing physical goods similar to the way that data flows in the digital internet. And here, these are two of my colleagues, Benoit Montreal at Georgia Tech and Eric Belleau in Mines Paris Technology. And we're working on a handbook together, and I'm using some of their slides. So I thought it was very, just hopeful that I could put their picture and then, you'll understand the role that they play. They are the leaders in the research associated with the physical internet. So let's go to the background. Why the physical internet? You look at the current methods of transporting, storing, handling of physical freight is simply unsustainable from an economic, environmental, and societal perspective. In fact, Montreal actually suggested there's 13 symptoms of unsustainable global logistics practices. I've taken a few just to give you some pictures so we can just sort of talk about from that list of 13. There are highways, when you really think about it, that are not used 24 hours every day. There are warehouses that are utilized perhaps for peak demand, and then other times they're not used as well. 20% of all trucks that travel here in the US are traveling empty as they move to another location to get their load. Look at our truck drivers. It's a very, very hard life that they lead, where they're on the road constantly picking up a load, dropping up a load. In fact, there is significant likelihood that there is going to be a shortage of truckers, and considering that 80% of all freight go on our truck, this is very significant. And also remembering that the average age of a over-the-road truck driver is right now around 53 years old. So people are not getting in the industry. This is leading, again, to more issues down the road. city logistics, moving inside the city with the traffic and everything else that they have. That's again an inefficiency. And then production facilities that I've got here. But we're not utilizing it 100% of the time. These are all causes of inefficiency. Here's a more specific, direct example. You know that a 40-foot container, and if you think about the back of a regular truck here in the US, travels, has about 40,000 pounds. Now, if you were Frito-Lay and you're shipping chips, you can fill that 40-foot container with about 12,000 pounds of actual weight, because basically you're not going to squeeze the chips together when you, pack a truck. You're basically shipping air. Let's say you're P&G and you're shipping Tide. You could get to 40,000 pounds with still lots of space in the truck. So here's an idea. What if P&G and Frito-Lay got together and you actually first filled, 30,000 pounds or whatever of Tide detergent, and then filled the remaining space with the chips? You have now improved the efficiency of both processes. This is sort of the germ of the idea of the physical internet. Let's collaborate to figure out ways to make the process more efficient. Now, I've got a video that I'm going to show that I kind of like. It's a little bit of a long video, and we'll just see if it runs too long. I might jump in, but it gives you a good view of how the physical internet would actually apply.
The physical internet is about shipping freight just like information flows over the internet. But do you truly know how that works? Did you ever wonder what route your email takes? Who owns the service that relay your message? Or which internet provider is used by your receiver? Probably none. And you don't have to. You rely on the internet to securely deliver your message to the receiver. Imagine a world where your message is a physical object and you are the sender or the receiver. To ship physical objects, you use the physical internet. Just like the network of servers form the internet, a network of hubs forms the foundation of the physical internet. A physical internet hub sends and receives products. Products may pass several hubs in this manner. Final delivery leaves from the hub closest to the receiver. Products moving over this open and interconnected network belong to many different parties, who have in common that they are users of the physical internet. In this way, the physical internet is enabling full horizontal and vertical collaboration. Shipments are optimized for the whole network. This requires a constant quest for the perfect capacity use of the network. Let's look at the following example. A Spanish wine producer exports her wines to Canada, Scandinavia, and Asia. When a Norwegian business connection orders 1,000 bottles of wine, the wine producer knows she can use the physical internet. No need to look for optimizing the load or finding out the routing for the best service and lowest cost. The physical internet will take care of all that. But the physical internet does not only look at collaboration in transport. It also unlocks collaboration opportunities for warehouses and decentralizing stocks. Therefore, in this example, through the physical internet, the wine producer will be able to store wines closer to the point of consumption. Just like the internet servers host data from different owners, physical internet warehouses connected to the hubs will store goods from different owners to enable faster shipment. To realize the physical internet, we'll also look at modular packaging, how to efficiently share information between partners, and at improved business models. Physical internet will not be realized today, but it is the way forward to create a more efficient and sustainable supply network for our global logistics in 2050.
All right, so hopefully that gave you an idea of exactly how the physical internet would actually work. So let's go to the basic definition. It's an open global logistics system based on the interconnection of logistics networks by a standardized set of collaboration protocols using modular containers and smart interfaces for increased efficiency and sustainability. Let's take a look at what that means. So what you've got to do is you've got to transform the way the physical objects are actually handled, moved, stored, used, Again, looking at efficiency. Transport the goods similar to the way the data packages move. You need to share resources, okay? So vehicles, data, transit centers, so that it'll be optimized. And you need to have some standard protocols so that you can actually have this collaboration. Horizontal, those would be companies who are competing in the same space, and vertical, which we're talking about buyers and suppliers. There are a number of research projects, two of the biggest. One is called the Modular Logistics Units and Shared Co-Model Modal Networks, Modular, and another one is the Alliance for Logistics Innovation through Collaboration in Europe, the ALICE platform. These are big, big projects that are funding multiple small research projects in the physical internet. Now, what I want to do is actually go to some very specific examples where we can see some of the benefits that are associated with using a physical internet. If you look at this, let's say you've got a truck that is going from Quebec City in Canada all the way to Los Angeles in California. Now, if it was a single driver, okay, taking one truck, which is what we normally do in a trailer, you got to travel 5,030 kilometers. Well, you've got rules. You can only drive 11 hours a day. So if you know that you're only going to drive 11 hours a day, it takes 120 hours there, and let's say coming back 240 hours. What if you actually had a single driver just drive 5.5 hours and then drop their load off and then drive 5.5 hours back? Now the truck driver can actually go home, which is one of the biggest problems with over-the-road work as far as that's concerned. Getting drivers to actually come back home is a big deal for them. So now the shipment actually never stops. It keeps going. And if you could imagine that it would get there in half the time, okay? But this requires collaboration of all these truck drivers, but you've actually improved the efficiency of the process, and you've also improved the working conditions of the truck driver. One of the key ways to actually make this work is this idea of a modular transport container. Now, everyone is familiar with a 40-foot container. That's how, goods are pretty well put on the back of trucks, that are put on ships, and so on, and in rail cars, of course. Well, one of the things that they came up with is this idea of taking a 40-foot container and really identifying 8 possible sizes that you could actually interlock and put into place, and that makes a 40-foot container. You could take those different sizes and then put it into a transport container, a handling container, and in a way you would actually get rid of the container and perhaps the pallet because the actual modules lock together. And then, of course, another key component, once you get the modular components together, you can look at things like a modular mover. They move these packages, conveyors. See, they get on different size trucks because you just add these packages are meant to be locked together, right? And then also on the back of a ship. You can have a road rail transport hub. You could have a cross-docking hub. So because everything is modular, everything fits well together, and they come in and they go out. Here was an example that Below actually did, where they looked at 2 very large retailers in France, Carrefour and Casino. They looked at all the shipments that they actually undertake in a given time with their suppliers. And when they did this is sort of this mess that you have within France. If they actually shared information so that these suppliers would actually fill the truck efficiently, you could actually, look at this, you've dramatically reduced the number of shipments, increased the efficiency. If you actually got rail involved, you've increased the efficiency even more. And from their calculations, there's a 32% overall cost savings and about a 60% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. This is very significant. Another project, it's actually a working company, Flex.com. They have developed an on-demand warehouse. One of the biggest problems you have in a warehouse, in fact, when I teach warehousing, I talk about this fact that you design the warehouse to be able to handle about 80% of demand. It is crazy to create a warehouse that will only handle 100% of demand because most demand is seasonal and it has peaks and valleys. So that's what you design for. And for the times when you exceed the capacity of the warehouse, you go ahead and just simply rent a public warehouse. Well, Flex.com has taken that step further. They've actually created on-demand warehousing, so you could actually get the warehouse when you need it, when the demand is actually there. Here is something that is very futuristic, but they've actually done an idea, or they've actually created this system, at least on paper, and they've done the proof of concept. And the basic idea of this is Switzerland is planning an underground freight system so that regular traffic is on top, and freight will actually go, this is an elevator, will go down into this freight corridor, and it'll join these all controlled automatically. There's no drivers here, and it'll join one of these pods, and it'll get shipped underground. And because there's no drivers and everything is done automatically, even though it's only traveling about 18, 20 miles an hour, it gets there eventually. And this is, they've been able to prove this concept, and they think that this will become operational in another 10 or 12 years. Whoops, sorry, I didn't want to play the video. Physical internet. So to be able to do this, you know, what are sort of the barriers? What are the things we need to do? Well, first of all, there's some technological issues. You know, things like pushing Internet of Things further, where you have, you know, things that are typically not connected to the internet now gets connected. Got to figure out ways to have secure data transmission, improve the exchange and interconnectivity, and you have to develop these physical internet containers. Then there are economic issues, because now you're relying on companies who are competitors to actually collaborate, okay? Because now you've got to agree who's responsible for what. When are you going to pick up this product? Because now you're using a distributed transport model. You know, you know, in that example of that 17 freight companies, imagine pricing issues, auction, you know, how do you actually determine who gets paid where when you're in this efficient process? There are regulations that need to be done, you know, legal liability. If one of those trucks along the 17 failed, who is actually liable? Certification issues. And clearly you've got to develop the infrastructure. You've got to develop the transit hubs, the actual centers, and, you know, so that these are facilities that you actually have to develop to make this thing work. Those are the requirements going forward. However, the benefits are immense. Automatically, in an economic level, there's going to be increased profits. Customer satisfaction, because goods are going to be shipped faster to the end customer. You're going to reduce costs, improve efficiency, which obviously leads to increased profits. Environmental benefits. Clearly, you can show that you can be able to reduce the amount of, you know, waste that you actually have. You could perhaps use renewable energy sources, reduce carbon dioxide emissions. All these things are good things. And then finally, on the social side, improve working conditions for the people who are working in the logistics industry. And thereby also, by having this kind of interoperable system, you could actually improve the security of the goods that you're actually transporting. So, that's in conclusion. Look, if we get this thing to work, you're going to meet the challenge of efficiently and sustainably moving, storing, supplying, using physical products. It's highly scalable. In other words, you got to start with small projects and build on that to make more connections happen one after another, and you could, you know, scale up into a full physical internet system. You do need critical mass by using the existing infrastructure. So you got to start to use the infrastructure and then develop, you know, the final physical internet system. To make it really work, and this last part is really key, it's got to get industry, academia, and government. All of them have to collaborate to make the physical internet happen. So with that, that's my conclusion, and I'm open for questions.
All right, so again, attendees, there is a chat button on the bottom of your screen. It looks like a cartoon bubble with 3 dots in it. Did I get kicked out?
Nope, you're still there.
Okay.
Let me find your video.
Sorry.
You disappeared.
I have disappeared.
It's okay, we can still hear you.
You can hear me,
I'll
okay.
find you.
Okay, so while we're waiting for that, the chat button is at the bottom of your screen. It looks like a cartoon bubble with 3 dots. Click that and then type your question in, and I will read that, assuming I can get back in. While you are typing your questions, I have a question. So we've talked a lot about logistics. Obviously, that's what you do, supply chain.
Mm-hmm.
Are the benefits of the physical internet related to just logistics?
Not at all. I mean, obviously, that's where the biggest impact would be. But for example, remember that I gave you that example about the truck driver, you know? So you could actually improve their lives, and you could actually get people into their industry, which would help help society, you know. Then the second part is, what about just empty warehouses that you have to build all over the place? Especially, you realize with Amazon e-commerce, we are getting used to this idea of two-day delivery, one-day delivery. Getting those products more efficiently, that's going to help society as a whole. So there's obviously other things than just the logistics issues.
Right. And if any of you have been back to Bethlehem recently, you know that just outside of town here, there is a lot of warehouses that have been encroached on what used to be agricultural fields. And
yes,
I imagine you take your students there quite a bit to study.
Absolutely. I mean, DCs are here because in the Lehigh Valley, we're within 8 hours truck drive of, more than 50% of the population of the U.S. So naturally, they're gonna build it here.
Wow, that's a big step. So we have
I teach this stuff, so I happen to know some of these things.
Fascinating. So Edward John White from Allentown has a question.
Sure.
What do you see as the challenges of physical internet, AI technology, and drone delivery technology moving forward?
Well, those are AI, obviously, at some point when these freight pods are moving automatically, then you're going to have a lot of AI involved in that process. So yes, those are things that we have to figure out. But a lot of the things that are already in place can actually meet some of these things. I think a bigger barrier is figuring out, if you've got a large warehouse, or if you've got a pretty sophisticated logistics system, you would be hard pressed to, why should I give up some of my efficiencies for a smaller competitor? That's going to be a bit more of a problem. Drones is a little bit, it's a bit out there. I mean, at some point, everything is going to get approved and you're going to see some of these benefits. Now UPS and some of the companies are using drones, real estate companies are using drones for mapping things, stuff that is way out there. So I'm not going to necessarily address that, but I think that definitely it'll help.
Yeah. Anthony has a good question. Using this model, don't you increase your risk? What if you require temperature control or specific requirements for your shipment?
Absolutely. So that's what's called the cold chain, right? I mean, when you're shipping flowers, it's got to stay the same temperature all the way through. And so the container now has a little, plug-in system and or a separate generator that'll actually keep the container cold. Well, in the same sense, when you have temperature controlled, you can imagine that those modules I talked about, some of those will have to be temperature controlled, and you'll have sensors. What's nice is because everything is interconnected, the customer of that shipment would know if it ever goes beyond the bounds because everything is going to be connected, and the container is constantly sending information of what the temperature is, where I am, how I was handled, and those kinds of things.
So
Great
that's
question.
Sort of the Internet of Things together with the physical internet.
Correct. The Internet of Things, it's the basic idea of taking small things and connecting to the internet, whereas the physical internet is much more of a macro, a global kind of thing. But they both rely on this idea of interconnectivity.
Yeah. Okay. Rob Kaufman has a question. You mentioned at the opening that the current system is unsustainable, and one factor is a lack of truck drivers. I'm unclear that you will require fewer drivers with this new system.
Great question. Let me be clear here. The trucking industry, where the lack of drivers is what's referred to as on-the-road truck drivers. Let me give you a simple example. I was, in my dissertation, I was looking at collaboration. I wanted to get a phone call with an over-the-road truck driver, and when I called him, I said, hey, in the next 4 to 6 weeks, if you ever come by, anywhere near the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, I will drive out and meet you. And he said to me, there's only 2 days that I know where I'm at. He has no idea when he's going to be there. It's Christmas and Thanksgiving. The rest of the time, because you pick a load and you go to someplace else and you wait for the next load. You go to Reno, Nevada. The next load happens to be in Pasadena. Then you're going back to Dallas. And then you're going, to Allentown. The point is, it's not known. The beauty of this system is that, of course, within the 4-hour drive, within cities, within these kinds of things, we're still going to have drivers. But where the big difference is going to be when you have this over-the-road kind of transport shipment, that's where the physical internet is going to really help.
Great. That's a great question. My cousin is a truck driver. Actually, he comes to Bethlehem. So if you ever need some, I have it.
Thank you.
Okay. This is from Fry T. Do you have a sense for whether a consortium of existing big logistics companies companies like FedEx, XPO, Maersk, and others are starting to coalesce around this with their real money to explore the next right steps?
Yeah, that's really sort of a bit of a loaded question. These companies are very successful at what they do. So I would not necessarily see some of the bigger companies actually willing to make some of these challenges. But, everyone is waiting. We've been able to show mathematically through simulations, we can show the benefits, but there's a little bit of a first mover kind of thing. How do you actually, handle the liability issues? And remember, I told you that some of these first move, these very, very large companies are successful because there's some inefficiencies built into the system. So when are they going to share their trucks, their planes, and their ships to make this thing more efficient? We all tend to be motivated by economic direction. So I would rather more likely see somebody coming out of, the smaller companies that start to improve the way that logistics gets handled. And they're the ones that are probably going to, disrupt the standard system.
Right.
Great question.
So is there an Uber?
Well, there is Uber Freight, and they've tried to do that. They actually launched it. From what I understand, it hasn't really been that successful. I mean, they're working on it, But yes, that would be a great example.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, so Donna Evans has a question. This addresses the transportation aspect. Please discuss how you see this impacting the put-away process at the warehouse level. Since there are smaller packages and possibly no pallets, it seems to possibly create a new challenge given that many warehouses would now have to be restructured.
Wow, that is a brilliant. You just wanted to confuse that. That's an excellent question. Yes, you're absolutely right. I mean, the way that I showed this was going from warehouse to warehouse. But you got to imagine that when you will now make changes in the warehouse to do this. I mean, the container was a brand new innovation in the early 50s, right? What you're going to do is that you're going to have to figure out ways to make those containers, when they come in, automatically come and take apart. But here's what happens. Now because you'll know when the containers are coming in, you could actually staff people to deal with that. You could have, I didn't play the video. There's a couple of warehouses. ES3 actually has a warehouse that is completely automated. And so, but the problem is that, remember, automation only works when you have standardized, expected kind of products. Anytime you have different shaped things, standardization runs into a problem. Humans are great at dealing with variability. So if you imagine that all the modules come in, you can create the kind of efficient system to actually take those modules apart and then ship it on its way, or re-put them together if it's going to a different direction. So yes, putting away products is an issue, and maybe when you get down to the level of each, which is like a single product, they're going to have those things. But Amazon is doing it. I mean, we're figuring out ways to automate it. So, Amazon bought Kiva with a robotics company because they're looking at ways to put robots in there. And I think any of this will actually just help make it more standardized. Great question.
It's 12:30, but we have 3 more questions, and they're really good. So do you think you stay another few minutes for us?
Yes, absolutely.
If you all have to go, we are recording, so you can watch the last few minutes if you do need to leave. But I'm just fascinated by this. So I'm gonna.
Great. Yes, I'm so happy someone's actually paying attention. This is really good.
So Norman asks, this system seems like the perfect setup for illicit goods to be transported. How much inspection will be necessary, and how will that affect the efficiency?
Great question. One of the things that you would automatically have with this thing is that when products get into a container, they're going to have to be RFID tagged. Someone is going to have to actually verify that the product is there. Now remember,
radio frequency.
Oh yeah, radio frequency identification tag. Great. And they're now down to about 20 cents per tag, right? But let me just sort of turn this around. One of the reasons, or one of the ways that the U.S. Government customs actually deals with products coming into the country is that they have their top suppliers, their top 100 suppliers, in a program where it's the supplier's job to verify what's inside that container. You've got to imagine that, you can't do 100% inspection in every container. So what do? The person who's actually shipping the product has to verify that the product is what it is. You can put RFID tags, but at some point, someone has to take responsibility for it. Now, does that mean that, drug gangs or some of these other people could not figure out ways. They could, but it's always a moving target. And so one of the things, though, because you're going to be interconnected, because you're going to be constantly sharing that information, I think it's more visible, and visibility and transparency leads to, I think, greater efficiency, and it would be a little bit more challenging for that as opposed to now where you just have containers moving all over the country. Great question.
Yeah. Bert asks, it strikes me this development would emerge faster if today's logistics providers were not so fragmented. Do you agree that industry consolidation would facilitate the acceleration of the physical internet, or do you believe it can just happen just as fast in a highly fragmented world?
Great question. Yeah, I mean, right now, for example, there's about 580,000 truck companies, but the vast majority of them are 1, 2 to maybe 10 trucks, right? So it's very, very fragmented. Fragmented barriers of entry, you can keep costs down. Clearly, if there's some consolidation, you can improve efficiency. Part of this whole point is improving efficiency. If you had somebody managing the entire process, you could then make sure that the units that go in the truck would be transported efficiently. But the problem is that sometimes when you have these very large companies, innovation can perhaps get stifled. And one of the benefits, and one of the things that we're so lucky to live in the US is that you have entrepreneurs who are constantly trying new ways to do things. So, your broad question asked, would industry consolidation help? Yes, absolutely. But you can't necessarily, the more that you see these kinds of companies, yes, you need significant investment in infrastructure and in technology and these kinds of things, and perhaps you need large companies to do that. But the small companies can be nimble and innovate, and then you don't have legacy costs that these large companies already have that they've got to absorb. Now you've got a warehouse with a ton of people, not robotics. And you have a small company that uses a robotic system, maybe they'd be more efficient. So I think I cannot directly say one way or the other, but I've sort of, being a professor, I've given you sort of an academic answer.
Great. And the last question from Anthony, how does blockchain technology fit into this model?
That's a great question. I mean, I am not done any research in blockchain. I'm just what was in the Wall Street Journal. So blockchain, clearly the benefits of it, it's the distributed ledger, right? So you're going to be able to track the currency and what you're actually paying. The beauty of blockchain that would make this system much more efficient is that part of the problem is in logistics is verifying the product is what it is. So you now have a ledger that's distributed so that people could actually know what's in there and it's verifiably the product that you thought it was. I could only see blockchain as helping this kind of a physical internet. In a way, they are related. Blockchain would allow you to make sure that it's verified. Sort of fits with the question that the person asked earlier, because now you can know exactly where it was sourced, and then all along the supply chain, you would know exactly what gets done to it. So I would only see it as a big help, facilitating this process.
Great. Well, that was the last question. I have every faith that Lehigh students are going to figure this out in our lifetime, right?
Absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely.
If anyone can do it,
yes,
with your guidance,
yes.
This will become reality. Well, thank you, everybody, for participating today. We will send out a short survey to ask your feedback, and if you have any other questions for Dr. Zacharia, you can ask them there, or just email Lindsay Drake, who sent you the invite, and we will get those questions to him. Thank you, and have a great day, and thank you so much
Thank you, Jennifer.
for sharing your time.
Excellent.
Bye-bye.
Bye.